Hello everyone, welcome back to Izzy's Travel Diaries. And today we're traveling in time, not in space, because I'm in my hometown. And this video is about what happened 65 years ago in this town and also in the country, because this is a very important day in Hungarian history. So before we go on, make sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thanks for the help. So 65 years ago, on October the 23rd, Hungary had a revolution. I actually asked around and not a lot of foreigners know about the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. It was a failed revolution, like all of our revolutions, but it sent an important message to our overlords, the USSR, that we won't just stand by and be their captives. And I think it's an important day to remember, and it's important for foreigners to also know what this tiny little nation did 65 years ago. In 1956, Szeged was an important university town, and it still is. And the university students were key in sparking the revolution in Szeged and actually all over the country, because about a week before that, the students in Szeged, they stood up and said, we won't just take things lying down, we will stand up against the monopoly of thought that the USSR was trying to impose on university students at the time. And they actually gave an important list of demands to the head coordinators, the head organization of students that was dominated by pro-Soviet thought, that we want freedom of thought. And also the 16 points they wrote in their manifesto was a very important part of the revolution, not just here in Szeged, but also all over the country and also in the hub of the revolution, which was Budapest. I want to explain further the national events of the revolution, as it has already been done on YouTube by the channel The Cold War. They made 2 excellent videos on the subject. Links in the description. This is the National Theatre in Szeged, and this is an important part of our story because this is where first the students from the Szeged University spoke about what they actually want and the changes they need. And it's part of what sparked the revolution in Szeged locally. So they also spoke the national song here, but it's currently under renovation, so I'm going to do that in a second location where they also did that. Not only students protested in front of the National Theatre, but also workers. Afterwards, they went on to protest at the police building and finally the Kossuth statue on Klauzál Square. This is the Klauzál Square, and it's a very important part of Szeged. Behind me is the statue of Kossuth, who actually on this square in 1848 delivered, well, actually it was I think more 49, because that was a longer revolution. So he delivered a speech on this very square, and that's why there's a statue of him. He's also for Hungarians a symbol of resistance, of standing up against oppressors, and also for a sort of a national pride. And it is on this square that 65 years ago They recounted the national song, which is a poem written by Sándor Petőfi, one of our greatest poets, who actually died in the revolution of 1848 and 49. And I found two translations to English of that poem, but frankly I didn't really like either of them, so I did my own. And so this is where they said, I'm just going to do the first bit. Stand up, Magyar, the nation calls. The time is here, now or never. Should we be captives or free? That is the question. Choose. By the God of the Magyars we swear to be captives no longer. If you want to know more about the revolution of 1848 and 49, I have a great video linked in the description. There is also a song version of the national song, which is very popular in Hungary. I managed to find an old video with it. The next day, on October the 24th, people gathered in front of the main university building. They went to encourage the workers of the rope factory to join and destroyed communist symbols along the way. They didn't join then, but they did the next day. They walked in protest, also destroying what they could. They shouted such things like, "Russians go home!" This cry would return in 1988, when the USSR was already crumbling and would eventually collapse. On October the 26th, the crowds were trying to make their way to the main square of Szeged, the Széchenyi Square. However, they never made it here, as when they didn't stop, the commander of the city had the soldiers shoot into the crowd. One man died, and several were wounded. The house behind me is important for my family because this is where my mom grew up, and it's in downtown Szeged. So she was only 5 years old when the revolution came to town, and she doesn't remember much, but one thing that she does remember, that when the revolution was beaten at just the start of November, the Russian tanks were coming to Szeged. Though actually I read up a bit, and there were tanks already on October the 24th, but they were from the local soldiers. But then also Russians came. So there was a bit of shooting, and there was one person who died. And so maybe my mom remembers that, but she does remember that because she lived upstairs with windows out to the street. Everyone who had windows out towards the street, they all gathered in the shelters within the house. And because she was so little, her and maybe a couple of other kids who were as little as she was, they went into an apartment which was on the ground floor, and that apartment didn't have any windows towards the street because they were all scared of being shot standing in the window, which has happened. So that's where they hid out, and it must have been a very scary part of her life because she was only 5. So it was scary times for a little girl, and she must have been scared for her family, for her sisters, because she had 2 older sisters, but luckily they all survived. And after the revolution was beaten, a lot of people ended up in jail or were executed for the things that they did, and a lot of people so left the country, so they fled, partly from all the awful things that happened to them, and also because, well, it was scary times. And but my family, they stayed, and they chose to remain here and follow the lines of our national anthem, which says that you have to live and die here. and they held on. And that's part of being Hungarian, that you hold on no matter what happens. These were the windows of my family's apartment. On November 6th, Soviet tanks stood in front of City Hall and the revolution was lost.